Emily Carter learned early that silence was safer than hope. In the small suburban town of Riverton, Ohio, her life moved quietly inside a narrow two-story house that never truly felt like home. The walls were clean, the floors polished, yet every corner held tension, as though the house itself knew fear. Emily was 19, thin from years of skipping meals, and careful in every movement she made. Carefulness had become her shield. Her father, Michael Carter, had died 4 years earlier in a factory accident that left nothing behind but unpaid bills and grief. Before his death, he had been the only warmth in Emily's world, the only voice that softened the sharp edges of life. After he was gone, the house belonged fully to Linda Carter, her stepmother. Linda had never loved Emily, not even pretended to. The moment Michael was buried, Linda's kindness disappeared with him. Linda was a woman obsessed with control. She believed weakness was a disease and poverty a personal failure. Every morning, she reminded Emily of her worth, or what she believed it was worth. "You eat too much for someone who contributes nothing," Linda would say, sliding a plate away. "You should be grateful I let you stay here." Emily worked part-time at a small grocery store on Maple Street, earning barely enough to buy soap and second-hand clothes. Linda took most of her pay, calling it rent. School had ended early for Emily. College was never discussed. Dreams were not allowed in Linda's house. But lately, something had changed. One evening, Emily overheard a phone call from the hallway. Linda's voice was low and pleased, a tone she rarely used. Emily paused, her breath caught. "She's young," Linda said. "Quiet. Obedient. You won't have trouble with her." Emily's stomach twisted. Later that night, Linda sat across from her at the kitchen table, folding her arms with satisfaction. "You're moving out soon," she said. "I've found a man willing to take responsibility for you. He owns a repair shop in Dayton. You'll live with him." Emily froze. "I don't understand." "You don't need to," Linda snapped. "You'll do what you're told." That night, Emily didn't sleep. Her father's old words echoed in her mind. If the world gets too heavy, run toward kindness. But kindness didn't live in Riverton anymore. 2 days later, Linda left the house early, dressed sharply, smiling to herself. Emily stood in her room, staring at a small backpack she had hidden under her bed. Inside were a worn hoodie, her birth certificate, $43 in cash, and a faded photo of her and her father at a county fair. Her hands shook as she zipped it closed. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stay. Emily slipped out of the house and walked toward the highway, her heart pounding louder with every step. Luxury cars passed her, smooth and silent, their drivers unaware of the fear chasing her footsteps. She reached a large shopping complex near Interstate 75, where expensive vehicles lined the parking lot like quiet promises of another world. That was when she saw it. A sleek black Bentley SUV, parked slightly apart from the others, its engine still warm. The driver had stepped away briefly, keys left inside. Emily hesitated, fear warring with desperation. She looked around. No one noticed her. No one cared. Her father's voice returned in her memory. "Run." Emily opened the back door and climbed inside, curling herself behind the seats, pressing her knees to her chest. The leather smelled expensive, unfamiliar. Her breath came shallow as the door shut softly. Moments later, the engine started. The car pulled onto the road, carrying Emily Carter away from Riverton, away from her stepmother, and unknowingly into the life of a man whose name echoed across America. Jonathan Reynolds. Billionaire. Theo. And the last person she ever expected to save her. Emily stayed folded into the space behind the second-row seats as the Bentley merged onto Interstate 75. She held her breath each time the vehicle slowed, certain someone would glance back and see her. Her backpack was clutched tight against her chest like it could keep her steady. In the front, Jonathan Reynolds drove with one hand on the wheel, his other near the console where his phone buzzed. He'd spent the day in meetings and calls, and now he wanted only quiet on the way to his terminal outside Cincinnati. Mr. Reynolds, his assistant, Mia Harper, came through the speakers. The board moved the schedule up. Your flight needs to depart in 45 minutes. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Tell them I'm on my way. And Mia, no more surprises today. Understood. Also, security flagged someone asking about your route at the mall. Probably nothing. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Send a unit to the terminal anyway. Emily's stomach dropped. Security. Route. Units. She had hidden in the car of someone important enough to have people tracking him. If they found her, she'd be treated like a criminal, dragged back to Riverton, delivered into Linda's hands. The Bentley accelerated. Emily tried to keep her breathing silent, but fear made her chest ache. She shifted slightly, and the leather creaked. Jonathan lowered the music. The sound had been small, but he'd built an empire by noticing small things. He glanced in the rearview mirror, then at the back seat area. Another creak. He signaled and guided the SUV off the highway toward a rest area. He didn't panic. He simply decided to see what was happening in his vehicle. The Bentley stopped. Jonathan put it in park, then turned slowly. "Who's back there?" he asked, calm but edged with warning. Emily stayed frozen. Jonathan reached for his phone. "I'm calling security." The word snapped something inside her. Emily sat up, hands raised, eyes wide. "Please," she blurted. "Don't. I'm not dangerous. I'm sorry. I didn't know whose car it was. I had to get away." Jonathan studied her. She looked young, terrified, and thin. Criminals didn't usually look like that. "Get away from what?" he asked. Emily swallowed. "My stepmother. She was going to send me to a man. I didn't agree. I didn't have a choice." Jonathan's expression tightened, not at her, but at whoever had put that fear into her. Still, he didn't trust easily. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily. Emily Carter." "How old are you?" 19. Jonathan glanced around the rest area. "You can't just hide in someone's vehicle," he said. "I know," Emily whispered. "I didn't think. If I go back, she'll ruin my life." Jonathan's phone buzzed. A message from Mia. "Security inbound." He stared at the screen, then at Emily. If security arrived and saw her, they'd assume threat first and ask questions later. "Do you have anyone you can call?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "My dad's gone. I don't have anyone." Jonathan's gaze flicked to her backpack. "What do you have in there?" "Papers. Clothes. A picture." He nodded slowly, weighing options. He could take her to a police station. He could call a hotline and hand her off. But he couldn't ignore the tremor in her hands, or the way she flinched when his phone vibrated. "Get in the front," Jonathan said. "Seatbelt on. When security arrives, you say nothing unless I ask. Understand?" Emily blinked. "You're helping me?" "I'm keeping you from getting hurt," Jonathan said. Emily slid into the passenger seat, hands shaking as she buckled the belt. 2 black SUVs pulled in minutes later. Men in suits stepped out, scanning the area. Jonathan lowered his window. "Everything's fine," he told them. "False alarm. Go ahead to the terminal." One guard glanced toward Emily, then back at Jonathan. Jonathan's stare was steady. "She's with me," he said. The guard nodded once and stepped away. As the SUVs rolled out, Emily released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Jonathan pulled back onto the highway. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. "Start from the beginning." Emily hesitated, then words poured out. She told him about the late-night phone call, the way Linda's voice turned sweet when money was involved, and the plan to place her with a man in Dayton like a bargain. She explained how Linda kept her paychecks and punished every mistake. No dinner, no heat, threats to throw her out in the snow. "She said I owed her for raising me," Emily murmured, staring at her knuckles. "But she never raised me." Jonathan listened without interrupting. His eyes stayed on the road, but his grip tightened. "Did she ever hurt you?" he asked. "Not with her hands," Emily said. "She used fear. She'd lock me out, hide my phone, tell me nobody would believe me. A silence settled between them, thick and hot. I'm not taking you back, Jonathan said finally. But I also can't keep you hidden. There are cameras at the terminal, and my people will ask questions. Emily's shoulders sagged. Then what do I do? Jonathan changed lanes. First, we get you safe. Then we handle this legally. I have an attorney who deals with emergencies. If your stepmother tries to report you missing, we document everything before she controls the story. Emily turned toward him, stunned. Why would you do that for me? His voice softened. Because someone should have done it for you long ago, Emily. Emily stared at him, searching his face for a trick, for cruelty disguised as kindness. She found neither, only caution and something like responsibility. The skyline of Cincinnati rose in the distance, glass and steel catching the late afternoon light. Emily realized she was crossing an invisible line, beyond Riverton, beyond Linda, beyond the life that had caged her. Freedom, she was learning, didn't begin with a wide-open door. Sometimes it began with a stranger's steady hands on a steering wheel. The Bentley rolled through the gated entrance of Westbrook Heights, a quiet, tree-lined enclave overlooking the Ohio River. Emily pressed her forehead lightly against the window, watching as manicured lawns and modern glass homes passed by. She had never been anywhere like this. In Riverton, houses leaned into one another, paint chipped, fences crooked. Here, everything felt deliberate, protected, untouched by desperation. Jonathan slowed the car and turned into a long driveway that curved toward a sleek, minimalist house of steel and stone. Soft lights glowed from inside, warm but restrained. The place didn't feel loud with wealth. It felt controlled. "This is my residence when I'm not traveling," Jonathan said as he parked. "You'll be safe here for the night." Emily's fingers tightened around the strap of her backpack. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not," he replied, stepping out. "Come on." Inside, the air was cool and clean. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the river below, reflecting the first hints of evening. Emily hesitated just past the doorway, suddenly aware of her worn shoes and frayed hoodie. "You can put your things down," Jonathan said gently. "You're not a guest who has to stand." She nodded and set the backpack near the entry bench. A woman in her early 40s appeared from a hallway, composed and alert. "You're back early," she said, then noticed Emily. Her eyes sharpened with professional curiosity, not judgment. "Emily," Jonathan said, "this is Rachel Moore, my legal counsel." "Rachel, Emily Carter." Rachel offered a small smile. "Nice to meet you, Emily." Emily returned it cautiously. She'd learned to measure adults by how quickly their kindness faded. They sat in Jonathan's office, walls lined with books, a desk uncluttered, precise. Rachel listened while Jonathan summarized the situation. Emily added details when asked, her voice trembling at first, then growing steadier as she realized she was being heard. Rachel leaned back, thoughtful. "Emily, legally speaking, you're an adult. Your stepmother has no authority to force you into living with anyone. If she tries to report you as missing or claim wrongdoing, that would work against her." Emily swallowed. "She's very convincing." "Convincing people often rely on silence," Rachel replied. "Documentation breaks that power." Rachel asked for dates, names, locations. Emily answered carefully, surprised at how much she remembered when someone took notes and didn't interrupt. When it was over, Rachel closed her folder. "I'll draft a statement tonight," she said. "Jonathan, I recommend temporary housing arrangements off-record for now. Emily, you should rest. Tomorrow, we can discuss next steps, employment options, education, whatever you want." Emily stared at her. "I get to choose?" "Yes," Rachel said simply. After Rachel left, Jonathan showed Emily to a guest room on the second floor. It was simple but elegant, a soft bed, clean linens, a window facing the river. Emily stood there, overwhelmed. "There's a bathroom through that door," Jonathan said. "Take a shower, get comfortable. Dinner will be ready soon." "Thank you," Emily said quietly. Jonathan paused at the doorway. "Emily, no one here will hurt you. If you need anything, just ask." When he left, Emily closed the door and leaned against it, sliding down until she sat on the floor. Her hands covered her face as silent tears finally fell, not of fear this time, but release. For the first time since her father died, she wasn't waiting for a door to slam or a voice to shout. She showered, letting the hot water wash away the day. She borrowed clothes Jonathan's housekeeper had left neatly folded, soft sweatpants and a clean shirt. They felt unreal against her skin. Downstairs, dinner was quiet. Jonathan didn't push conversation. He asked if she preferred soup or pasta. She chose soup, and he nodded like it mattered. As they ate, Emily studied him. He wasn't cold, but he was careful, as if every decision carried weight. She wondered how someone like him, powerful, wealthy, could also be so measured. "Why did you really help me?" she asked suddenly. Jonathan looked up. "I told you." "I know," Emily said. "But people say things. They don't always mean them." He set his spoon down. "When I was 17, my mother tried to force me into her idea of a life. I ran. I had money later, but not then. Someone gave me a place to sleep when they didn't have to. It mattered." Emily absorbed that quietly. That night, she lay awake in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. Her heart jumped. A message appeared. "Linda, you think you can disappear? Come home now." Emily's fingers shook. Another message followed. "Linda, if you don't, I'll tell the police you were kidnapped." Emily felt the old fear claw back. She sat up, breathing fast. She typed, erased, typed again, then stopped. Rachel's words echoed. Documentation breaks that power. Emily took screenshots and saved them. Then she walked downstairs. Jonathan was in the study, reviewing documents. He looked up as Emily entered, pale but determined. "She's texting me," Emily said. "Threatening me." Jonathan nodded calmly. "Show me." She handed him the phone. He read the messages, then looked at her. "You did the right thing coming to me." He forwarded the screenshots to Rachel and typed a single response from his phone. All communication regarding Emily Carter should go through legal counsel. Cease contact immediately. Jonathan handed the phone back. "You're not alone anymore." Emily felt something shift inside her. Not safety. She knew better than to trust safety too easily, but possibility. Outside, the river flowed steadily, indifferent to fear and cruelty alike. Emily closed her eyes and slept, knowing that somewhere behind her, the life she escaped was shrinking, losing its grip. Morning arrived gently in Westbrook Heights, carried on pale sunlight and the distant sound of birds along the river. Emily woke slowly, confused for a moment by the unfamiliar quiet. There were no angry footsteps in the hallway, no sharp voice calling her useless before breakfast. Just stillness. She sat up in bed, clutching the blanket, and let the reality settle in. She was not in Riverton. She was not under Linda's roof. For the first time in years, the morning did not feel like a punishment. After showering and dressing, Emily went downstairs. Jonathan was already awake, dressed casually, reading news on a tablet while coffee brewed nearby. "Good morning," he said, looking up. "Did you sleep?" "Yes," Emily replied, surprised by how true it felt. "Really slept?" Jonathan smiled faintly. "Good. Rachel will come by later today. There's something else we need to address first." Emily's chest tightened. "What is it?" "Your stepmother filed a missing person report this morning," Jonathan said calmly. "She claims you were taken against your will." The old fear surged instantly. Emily's hands curled into fists. "I knew she would." "And that's exactly why we prepared," Jonathan replied. "Rachel anticipated this. The report is already flagged as potentially false." "But there's more." He turned the tablet toward her. A local news article filled the screen. Local billionaire questioned after young woman found in his vehicle. Emily's face drained of color. "I'm on the news." "Not by name," Jonathan said. "But rumors travel fast when money is involved." Emily's stomach churned. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have." "Stop," Jonathan said firmly. "You didn't create this. Linda did." A knock sounded at the door before Emily could respond. Jonathan rose and opened it to reveal two uniformed police officers. Emily's breath caught. "Mr. Reynolds," one officer said politely. "We're following up on a missing person report." Jonathan stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." Emily stood frozen as they entered. Jonathan gestured toward her. "This is Emily Carter." The older officer addressed her gently. "Miss Carter, are you here of your own free will?" Emily swallowed. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. She thought of Linda's voice, the threats, the fear. Then she thought of the night she'd slept without terror. "Yes," she said clearly. "I am." "Did anyone force you to leave your home?" the officer asked. "No." "Did anyone here restrain you or prevent you from leaving?" Emily shook her head. "No, sir." The officer nodded and turned to Jonathan. "Thank you for your cooperation. Miss Carter, as an adult, you're free to choose where you stay. We'll note that in our report." As they left, Emily's legs nearly gave out. Jonathan caught her before she fell. "You handled that perfectly," he said. Minutes later, Rachel arrived, sharp-eyed and efficient. She reviewed the officer's notes and Linda's text messages. "Linda overplayed her hand," Rachel said. "False reporting is a serious issue. If she continues, she could face legal consequences." Emily stared at the papers. "She won't stop." "Then we escalate," Rachel replied. "We file for a restraining order. And we make your independence official." They discussed practical matters next. Emily would need identification copies, a secure phone plan, a separate bank account. Each item felt surreal. Independence, she realized, wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was paperwork, decisions, steps taken one after another. In the afternoon, Jonathan insisted she step outside. "You've been running for a long time," he said. "You don't have to today." They walked along a stone path overlooking the river. Emily watched the water move steadily forward, unafraid of what lay ahead. "I keep waiting for something bad to happen," she admitted. "Like this is temporary." Jonathan stopped walking. "Fear doesn't disappear just because danger does. It lingers. But it doesn't get to decide your future." Emily hesitated. "What happens when I leave here?" "You won't be thrown into the street," Jonathan said. "Rachel is arranging a small apartment in Cincinnati. Short term. Quiet. You'll work with a career advisor I trust. You said you liked numbers, right?" Emily nodded. "Accounting. My dad used to help me practice." Jonathan smiled. "Good. We'll start there." As evening approached, Jonathan's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "It's Linda," he said. "She somehow got this number." Emily's heart pounded. "You don't have to answer." "I want to," Jonathan replied. He put the call on speaker. "Where is she?" Linda's voice snapped immediately. "What kind of man hides a girl from her family?" Jonathan's tone was ice calm. "Emily is not hidden. She's protected. Any further contact from you will go through legal counsel." "You're filling her head with lies," Linda hissed. "She owes me." "No," Jonathan said. "She owes you nothing." There was a pause, then a laugh. "You think this will end well? People like her don't belong in your world." Jonathan glanced at Emily, then spoke with deliberate clarity. "People like you rely on fear. That stops today." He ended the call. Emily felt something break free inside her chest. Not sadness, not fear, but relief. Linda's power, once enormous, now sounded small through a speaker. That night, Emily stood by the window in her room, watching city lights shimmer across the river. She wasn't naive enough to believe everything would be easy. She knew healing took time. But for the first time, the future didn't look like a closed door. It looked like a road, long, uncertain, but open. And somewhere deep inside, Emily Carter allowed herself to take the first step forward without looking back. Emily moved into the apartment 3 days later. It was small, just one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a living area that smelled faintly of fresh paint, but to Emily, it felt enormous. The windows overlooked a quiet street in Cincinnati, where buses passed regularly and people walked dogs in the early mornings. Life happened here, ordinary and unguarded. Jonathan stood just inside the doorway as movers carried in a few essentials: a bed, a table, a chair, and 2 boxes Rachel had labeled documents and clothing. It wasn't luxury, and that was intentional. "This place is yours," Jonathan said. "No staff. No cameras inside. You set the rules." Emily nodded, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he replied. "You chose yourself." After he left, Emily sat on the floor with her back against the couch and let the silence settle. This time, it wasn't the tense silence of waiting for anger. It was open. Empty. Hers. The first night alone was harder than she expected. Every sound made her heart jump: the hum of the refrigerator, a car door slamming outside, footsteps in the hallway. She checked the locks 3 times before lying down. Sleep came in fragments. Morning, however, brought purpose. Rachel arrived with a folder and a brisk smile. "Today, we make you official," she said. They started with a bank appointment. Emily's hands trembled as she signed forms, opening her first account that wasn't monitored or drained by someone else. When the banker handed her a debit card with her name embossed on it, Emily stared at it like it might vanish. "That's real," Rachel said gently. "And it's yours." Next came the phone store. Emily chose a simple plan and a modest phone. She texted Jonathan her new number, then paused, staring at her contact list. It was nearly empty. No family. No friends. Not yet, she reminded herself. In the afternoon, Rachel introduced her to Daniel Brooks, a career advisor Jonathan trusted. Daniel was kind but direct, the kind of man who believed structure was freedom. "You have strong math scores," he said, reviewing Emily's old school records. "And good work history, considering your circumstances. We'll start with certification courses. Accounting assistant, bookkeeping, payroll." Emily's eyes widened. "I can do that." "You can," Daniel said. "You just haven't been allowed to try." By the end of the day, Emily's head buzzed with information. Plans. Options. It was exhausting in a way fear never was. Fear was familiar. Possibility took effort. That night, as she organized her few belongings, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Her pulse spiked, but she answered. "Emily," Linda's voice said, smooth and poisonous. "You think a lawyer and a rich man can erase me?" Emily's chest tightened, but she didn't freeze. "You're violating the cease contact notice," Emily said quietly. Linda laughed. "Listen to you. Rehearsed. Do you know what people will think when they find out how you got into his car? You're already being talked about." Emily's grip tightened around the phone. Old shame stirred, but it didn't take root. "I didn't do anything wrong," Emily said. "And this call is recorded." Silence. Then the line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, shocked, not by Linda's cruelty, but by her own calm. She forwarded the call log to Rachel and sat down, breathing steadily. "I handled that," she thought. "I really did." The following weeks passed in steady rhythm. Emily attended online classes in the mornings, studied in the afternoons, and worked evenings at a cafe near her apartment. The pay wasn't much, but every dollar went into her account. Watching the balance slowly rise felt like reclaiming stolen time. Jonathan checked in occasionally, never intrusively. Sometimes a brief text, "How are you holding up?" Sometimes advice about balancing work and study. He didn't hover, and Emily appreciated that more than constant protection. One evening, after a long shift, Emily sat at her tiny kitchen table with textbooks spread out. Numbers danced on the page, but they didn't scare her. They made sense. They obeyed rules. For the first time, her mind felt quiet while working. Her phone buzzed again, this time a news alert. Local woman faces investigation for false police report. Emily clicked the article. Linda's name was there, printed plainly. The accusations. The messages. The misuse of emergency services. Emily covered her mouth, stunned. A part of her felt guilty, years of conditioning whispering that Linda's consequences were her fault. Another part felt something unfamiliar. Justice. The investigation wasn't a victory parade. Linda wasn't arrested. But the power imbalance shifted. Public scrutiny replaced private terror. That night, Emily dreamed of her father. He stood at the edge of a fairground, smiling the way he used to. When she woke, her pillow was damp with tears, but they didn't hurt. Weeks turned into a month. Emily passed her first certification exam. She celebrated alone at first, sitting on the floor with takeout and a small candle she'd bought impulsively. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she texted Jonathan. "I passed." His reply came quickly. "I knew you would. Proud of you." The words settled deep, not as validation, but acknowledgement. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Emily walked along the river path near her apartment. The water moved steadily, just as it had the first night she escaped. She realized something then. Her life was no longer defined by what she was running from. It was being shaped by what she was building. Emily Carter stopped walking and closed her eyes, breathing in the cool air. She wasn't healed. She wasn't fearless. But she was standing. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped halfway under Emily's apartment door like it was unsure whether it belonged inside. She noticed it only after returning from her cafe shift, shoes aching, mind pleasantly tired from balancing registers and double-checking receipts. The envelope was cream-colored, official-looking, with her name printed neatly across the front. Emily Carter. For a moment, she just stared at it. Letters had always meant trouble. Bills Linda waved in her face. Notices meant to scare her into obedience. Her chest tightened automatically. She picked it up and locked the door behind her before opening it. The letter was from the county court. Her stepmother had filed a formal objection to the restraining order. Emily sat down slowly on the couch, paper trembling in her hands. The words blurred, then sharpened as she forced herself to read. Linda claimed emotional dependency, claimed manipulation, claimed that Emily was being influenced by a powerful individual for personal gain. Emily let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course. That night, sleep refused to come. Every sentence from the letter replayed in her mind, old doubts resurfacing with sharp precision. What if people believe her? What if they think I planned all of this? The next morning, she met Rachel at the law office downtown. The building was tall and cold, glass reflecting the city like a mirror that didn't quite tell the truth. Rachel read the letter calmly, then set it aside. "This is intimidation," she said. "And it won't work." Emily twisted her fingers together. "I don't want to go to court." "I know," Rachel replied. "But sometimes, standing up is the only way to make someone stop trying to sit on you." Emily nodded slowly. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Jonathan called that evening. "Rachel filled me in," he said. "How are you holding up?" "I thought I was past this," Emily admitted. "But it feels like she still has a hand on my life." Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Power doesn't disappear when challenged. It resists. That doesn't mean you're losing. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," Emily said. "You already proved you are," Jonathan replied. "Strength isn't about not shaking. It's about showing up anyway." The day of the hearing arrived gray and cold. Emily dressed carefully, not to impress, but to feel steady. Simple blouse. Dark slacks. Her hair tied back neatly. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she stood differently. In the courtroom, Linda sat stiffly on the opposite side, lips tight, eyes sharp with practiced victimhood. She wore soft colors, the kind meant to suggest fragility. Emily felt her stomach twist. Linda's attorney spoke first, painting a picture of a confused young woman led astray by wealth and influence. Emily listened, heart pounding, but she didn't interrupt. She didn't need to. When it was Emily's turn, Rachel stood beside her. "Tell the court why you left," the judge said. Emily's voice wavered at first. Then it steadied. "I left because I was afraid," she said. "Not of the world, but of staying where I was." She spoke of the withheld paychecks, the threats, the pressure to be sent away like property. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't soften the truth either. Linda scoffed quietly. Emily looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something surprising. Nothing. No fear. No guilt. Just distance. "I am not being controlled," Emily continued. "I am being supported." There is a difference. The judge reviewed the evidence, the text messages, the false police report, the repeated violations of the cease contact order. The ruling came quickly. The restraining order was granted in full. Linda stood abruptly, face tight with fury, but the bailiff's presence kept her silent. As she was escorted out, her eyes met Emily's for a brief second, still sharp, still angry, but no longer powerful. Emily exhaled shakily. Outside the courthouse, Rachel squeezed her shoulder. "You did well." Jonathan waited near the steps. He didn't say anything at first, just nodded once, respect clear in his eyes. "Thank you," Emily said, "for believing me." "You believed yourself," he replied. "I just stood nearby." In the weeks that followed, life settled again, but not back into comfort. Into growth. Emily completed her certification and was offered a junior bookkeeping position at a mid-sized logistics firm. The office was bright, busy, filled with people who didn't know her past and didn't need to. Her first paycheck from the firm hit her account on a Friday morning. She stared at the numbers, breath-catching. It wasn't just money. It was proof. That evening, she treated herself to dinner at a small restaurant by the river. Sitting alone didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt intentional. As she walked home, phone buzzing with a message from Daniel congratulating her, Emily realized something quietly profound. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was becoming. Becoming someone who chose. Someone who planned. Someone who didn't need to hide in the back seat of a car to escape. At home, she opened her laptop and began outlining long-term goals. Further certification, maybe night classes, savings plans. Each line felt like laying another brick beneath her feet. Emily paused, hands hovering over the keyboard, then added one more line. "Forgive myself for the years I spent afraid." She leaned back, eyes closing, and smiled, not because life was perfect, but because it was hers. And that made all the difference. Emily's life began to settle into something that resembled normalcy, though the word still felt strange to her. Weeks passed, then months, measured not by fear but by routines. Morning commutes, coffee breaks, deadlines, and quiet evenings spent studying or reading by the window. Her new job at Riverside Logistics challenged her in ways she hadn't expected. The office buzzed with constant movement, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, co-workers laughing over inside jokes she slowly began to understand. Emily worked hard, double-checking every figure, determined never to give anyone a reason to doubt her competence. "You're meticulous," her supervisor, Karen Whitfield, said one afternoon, leaning over Emily's desk. "That's rare. Keep it up." The praise made Emily smile, though a part of her still waited for it to be followed by criticism. Old habits took time to unlearn. Jonathan kept his distance, just as he had promised. Their contact remained respectful and infrequent, occasional texts, brief check-ins. Yet every time his name appeared on her phone, Emily felt something stir inside her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude. She didn't like that feeling. One evening, Jonathan invited her to dinner. It wasn't framed as anything special, just a simple message. "I'll be in Cincinnati tonight. Would you like to eat?" Emily stared at the phone for a long moment before replying. "Yes." They met at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river, elegant but understated. Jonathan arrived first, standing when he saw her, his expression softening. "You look well," he said. "So do you," Emily replied, surprised by how natural it felt. Dinner flowed easily. They talked about work, about books, about places Jonathan had traveled and places Emily hoped to see one day. For the first time, Emily wasn't recounting trauma or defending her choices. She was simply present. At one point, Jonathan studied her quietly. "What?" Emily asked, self-conscious. "You're different," he said. "More grounded." Emily smiled faintly. "I'm not running anymore." Jonathan nodded. "I'm glad." The words lingered between them, heavier than either expected. As they left the restaurant, a group of people nearby whispered, eyes flicking toward Jonathan. Emily noticed instinctively, her body tensing. "They recognize you," she said. He sighed. "It happens." Emily hesitated, then spoke honestly. "This world, it's still intimidating." Jonathan stopped walking. "You don't belong to it unless you want to." "I don't want to belong to your world," Emily said quietly. I just don't want to feel small next to it." Jonathan looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Respect, admiration, and something far more dangerous. "You're not small," he said. "You never were." The moment stretched. Emily felt it, the invisible line between safety and something else. Her heart beat faster, warning her even as it pulled her forward. She stepped back gently. "Jonathan, I don't know what this is." "Neither do I," he admitted. "And that's why we need to be careful." Emily nodded, relieved and disappointed all at once. They said goodbye with a simple hug, brief, respectful, but charged. As Emily walked home, her thoughts raced. Gratitude had grown into something warmer, something riskier. And she wasn't sure she was ready for it. The following week tested her resolve. A scandal broke online, anonymous posts accusing Jonathan Reynolds of exploiting vulnerable women, resurrecting the story of the girl found in his car. Though Emily's name wasn't mentioned, the implication was clear. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages from co-workers who had seen the headlines, questions wrapped in concern and curiosity. "Is this about you? Are you okay?" Emily sat at her desk, staring at the screen, her hands cold. She left work early and went home, heart pounding. Old shame threatened to creep back in, but she caught it this time. "I didn't do anything wrong." Jonathan called that evening. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "This is my world bleeding into yours. If you want distance—" "No," Emily said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I won't let lies decide my life again." There was silence on the other end. Then Jonathan exhaled slowly. "Thank you," he said. "But you don't owe me this." "I know," Emily replied. "This is for me." Rachel moved quickly. Statements were issued. Evidence released. The accusations unraveled within days, exposed as attempts at extortion. Public opinion shifted, as it always did, restless and hungry for the next story. What mattered more was what happened inside Emily. She went back to work, head high. When a coworker hesitated before asking, "Are you sure you're okay?" Emily met her eyes and smiled. "I am," she said. And she meant it. One evening, Emily stood alone on her balcony, city lights glowing below. She thought about Jonathan, about the careful distance he maintained, the respect he never crossed. She realized that what frightened her wasn't him. It was the possibility of wanting something more. She sent him a message before she could overthink it. "I don't regret meeting you." The reply came minutes later. "Neither do I. Whatever comes next, it happens at your pace." Emily closed her eyes, breathing deeply. For so long, her life had been about survival, about escape. Now it was about choice, and with choice came responsibility, courage, and risk. She didn't know where her feelings would lead. She didn't know how their paths would align, or if they ever truly would. But for the first time, Emily Carter wasn't afraid of what her heart was telling her. She was listening. The rumors faded the way they always did, slowly at first, then all at once, until Emily realized she could walk into work without feeling watched. Her co-workers stopped whispering. The headlines moved on. Life resumed its forward rhythm, steady and unspectacular, and that steadiness felt like a gift. With quiet returning, a new question took its place. What do I want now? Emily hadn't asked herself that before. Survival had been a full-time job. Decisions were made for her, routes dictated by fear or necessity. Now the space was hers, and it felt both liberating and heavy. She filled that space with work. At Riverside Logistics, she was given more responsibility, reconciling vendor accounts, preparing weekly summaries for management. Karen noticed. "You're ready for the next step," her supervisor said one morning, handing Emily a file. "There's a junior analyst role opening. Internal hire. You should apply." Emily's breath caught. "Me?" Karen smiled. "Yes, you." Emily took the file home that night, spreading the pages across her kitchen table. Requirements. Expectations. Growth paths. The future, written in bullet points. She imagined herself a year from now, 2 years, independent, skilled, confident. She also imagined Jonathan. Not as a rescue or a shield, but as a presence that made her feel seen. The realization unsettled her. She had worked so hard to build a life that belonged solely to her. Where did he fit into that without taking up too much space? She didn't have an answer. Rachel called later that week. "I wanted you to hear it from me," she said. "Linda's investigation concluded. She's been formally warned and fined. No further action unless she violates the order again." Emily closed her eyes. Relief came, clean and quiet. "Thank you. You earned it," Rachel replied. "And Emily, this chapter is closing. Don't keep living as if it's still open." The words lingered. That Friday, Jonathan invited Emily to a charity gala hosted by his foundation. The message was careful, as always. No pressure. Public event. "I'll understand if you'd rather not." Emily stared at the invitation on her phone. A room full of strangers. Cameras. Whispers. A world that had once terrified her. But she wasn't the same girl who hid in the back of his car. "I'll go," she typed back. "On one condition." "Name it." "I walk in on my own." Jonathan's reply came quickly. "Deal." The gala took place in a restored historic building downtown, light spilling through tall windows, music low and elegant. Emily arrived alone, wearing a simple navy dress she'd bought with her own money. She paused at the entrance, steadying her breath. "I belong anywhere I choose to stand," she reminded herself. Inside, the room buzzed with conversation. Emily felt eyes turn, curiosity flicker, then pass. She moved through the space slowly, accepting a glass of water, nodding politely. When Jonathan approached, he didn't take her arm. He smiled, offering warmth without possession. "You look incredible," he said. "So do you," she replied, meaning it without awe. They spoke with donors and board members. Emily answered questions about her work with confidence, careful not to shrink or inflate herself. Jonathan watched her with quiet pride, intervening only when invited. At one point, a woman approached Emily directly. "I've heard about you," she said, not unkindly. "You're very brave." Emily met her gaze. "I'm very lucky," she said. "And very determined." The woman nodded, satisfied. Later, standing near the balcony overlooking the city, Jonathan turned to Emily. "You did exactly what you asked for," he said. "You walked in on your own." Emily smiled. "And I stayed." Something shifted then, not dramatically, not publicly, but decisively. They talked honestly that night. About boundaries. About timing. About the risk of letting feelings grow before roots were strong enough to support them. "I don't want to be something you outgrow," Jonathan said quietly. "I don't want to lose myself again," Emily replied. They stood there, city lights between them, and chose patience. The following week, Emily applied for the analyst position. She spent nights preparing, revising her resume, practicing interviews in the mirror. When doubt crept in, she didn't call Jonathan. She called herself back to the facts. "You earned this." The interview went better than she'd hoped. When the offer came, she read the email twice to be sure. Junior financial analyst. Salary increase. Benefits. A future that required planning. She celebrated with takeout and a notebook, writing goals and timelines. She didn't add anyone else's name to those plans. Not yet. That felt right. Jonathan sent a simple message that evening. "Heard the news. Congratulations." "Thank you," she replied. "I'm proud of myself." "As you should be," he wrote. Weeks passed. Emily grew into her role, her confidence no longer borrowed but built. She noticed changes in herself, the way she spoke up in meetings, the way she slept without checking locks twice, the way she laughed without bracing for consequences. One evening, as autumn edged the city in gold, Emily met Jonathan for coffee. No gala. No headlines. Just two people at a small table. "I've been thinking," Emily said, "about us." Jonathan waited, attentive. "I don't want to rush," she continued. "But I don't want to hide either." He nodded. "Neither do I." They didn't define anything that day. They didn't need to. What mattered was the agreement, mutual, deliberate, chosen. As Emily walked home, coffee cooling in her hand, she realized something important. For the first time, she wasn't choosing between safety and desire. She was choosing alignment. And that, she knew, was the most honest choice she'd ever made. Winter came quietly to Cincinnati, the kind that didn't announce itself with storms but settled in with sharp mornings and early sunsets. Emily felt the season in her bones as much as she saw it outside, an awareness that she was nearing the end of something, even as something stronger took shape. Her new role at Riverside Logistics demanded more of her time and focus. As a junior financial analyst, she sat in meetings she once would have avoided, speaking with calm authority when numbers didn't add up. When she made a mistake, she corrected it openly, without shame. The fear of punishment had loosened its grip. "You're progressing fast," Karen told her during a quarterly review. "If you keep this up, leadership will notice." Emily thanked her and walked back to her desk with steady steps. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was building competence, and that felt better. Jonathan noticed the change too. They met occasionally now, walks by the river, coffee after work, quiet dinners where the conversation drifted from books to plans to the strange responsibility of caring deeply without controlling. They hadn't labeled anything. The absence of a label felt intentional, protective. One evening, Jonathan invited her to his Westbrook Heights home again. Emily hesitated before accepting. The last time she'd been there, she'd needed refuge. Now she wanted to arrive whole. When she stepped inside, nothing had changed, the clean lines, the quiet order, but Emily had. "I almost said no," she admitted as Jonathan poured tea. "Why didn't you?" he asked. "Because I didn't want fear to make decisions for me anymore." Jonathan smiled. "Then I'm glad you're here." They sat by the windows overlooking the river, steam rising from their mugs. Outside, lights reflected off dark water, steady and unbothered. "I'm considering something," Jonathan said after a moment, "and I wanted to talk to you before it becomes public." Emily listened. "There's a board seat opening at the foundation," he continued. "I want to step back operationally for a year, focus on long-term strategy, less visibility. The work will still matter. It just won't revolve around me." Emily studied him. "That's a big shift." "So is everything worth doing," he replied. She nodded slowly. "Why are you telling me?" "Because whatever this is between us," Jonathan said carefully, "I don't want it built on surprises or power imbalances." Emily appreciated that. "Thank you." The following week, the city buzzed with news. A local investigative journalist published a deep dive into charitable foundations, mismanagement in some, integrity in others. Jonathan's foundation was named as a model, and with it came renewed attention. Emily felt the ripple immediately. Colleagues asked questions again, more curious than suspicious this time. "Is it strange," one asked gently, "being connected to someone that visible?" Emily considered the question. "It used to be," she said honestly. "Now it's just information." That night, Emily received an email from a community organization seeking volunteers to teach basic financial literacy. The message mentioned her recent work and invited her to help design a workshop. She accepted without hesitation. Standing in a small community center weeks later, Emily faced a room of people who reminded her of herself not long ago. Tired, wary, hopeful despite it all. She spoke about budgeting, about credit, about the quiet power of understanding where money goes and why. Afterward, a young woman approached her. "I didn't know someone like you could come from where I am," she said. Emily smiled. "Someone like me is exactly who comes from where you are." Driving home that evening, Emily realized something subtle but profound. She wasn't just free from her past. She was useful because of it. Jonathan attended one of the workshops quietly, sitting in the back. He didn't interrupt. He didn't introduce himself. When it ended, he waited until the room cleared. "You were excellent," he said simply. Emily felt warmth bloom, untainted by dependence. "I felt like myself." "That's the best kind of success," Jonathan replied. The pressure came unexpectedly a few days later. An entertainment outlet published a speculative piece linking Emily and Jonathan explicitly, complete with photos taken out of context and insinuations dressed as curiosity. Emily read it twice, jaw tight. Jonathan called immediately. "I can shut this down." Emily closed her eyes, thinking. "No," she said. Not yet. He paused. Are you sure? I need to handle this, she replied. My way. She drafted a short statement with Rachel's guidance, measured, factual, firm. It outlined her independence, her work, her refusal to be reduced to rumor. No drama. No defense. Just truth. The outlet posted it. The reaction was swift and surprising. Support poured in. The narrative shifted. Emily went to work the next day with her head high. When a colleague nodded in approval, she returned it calmly. That evening, she met Jonathan by the river. You didn't need me, he said softly. I wanted you, Emily replied. There's a difference. They stood side by side, hands brushing but not entwined, the city moving around them. Jonathan took a breath. I don't want to rush what we haven't named. But I do want to ask, when you think about your future, do I have a place in it? Emily considered the question carefully, the way she had learned to do with everything important. Yes, she said. Not as a rescue. Not as a shadow. As a partner, if we keep choosing each other honestly. Jonathan nodded, emotion flickering across his usually composed face. That's all I want. They didn't kiss then. They didn't need to. The commitment wasn't physical. It was deliberate. As winter deepened, Emily felt something settle inside her, a sense of alignment so steady it felt like standing in sunlight without squinting. She had faced her past, answered its challenges, and refused to let it dictate her shape. Now, as she looked ahead, she didn't see a life defined by escape or survival. She saw one defined by presence. And she was ready for what came next. Spring arrived without asking permission, threading green through the city and softening the sharp edges winter had left behind. Emily noticed the change in small ways first, the longer light in the mornings, the windows she opened without thinking, the ease with which she stepped into each day. Her life no longer felt like a reaction. It felt intentional. At Riverside Logistics, Emily's role expanded again. She was trusted with forecasts, invited into planning sessions, asked for opinions that shaped decisions. When she spoke, people listened, not because of who she knew, but because of what she understood. One afternoon, Karen called her into the office and closed the door with a smile. We're creating a new analyst lead position, she said. I want you to take it. Emily blinked. Already? You earned it, Karen replied. And you didn't wait for permission. Emily walked out of the office stunned, then sat at her desk and let the feeling wash over her. Pride didn't explode. It settled, deep, steady, unshakable. That evening, she walked along the river alone, shoes in hand, letting the cool grass ground her. She thought of the girl she had been, curled up in the back of a car, heart pounding, believing escape was the same thing as freedom. She smiled softly. Freedom, she'd learned, was what you did after you escaped. Jonathan waited for her at the cafe they'd quietly claimed as theirs. No photographers. No headlines. Just two people who had chosen patience over spectacle. She told him the news. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he stood and pulled her into a hug, strong, grounding, unafraid. I'm proud of you, he said into her hair. I am too, Emily replied, and meant it just as much. They talked about the future then, not in sweeping promises, but in details. Jonathan's decision to step back from daily leadership at the foundation had given him space. Emily's new role had given her confidence. Their lives weren't merging. They were aligning. I don't want to disappear into your world, Emily said quietly. You won't, Jonathan replied. And I don't want to shrink yours. They decided on something simple. Time. Shared deliberately. Protected fiercely. Weeks later, Emily stood once again in a courtroom, not as someone seeking protection, but as someone offering closure. Linda's final violation of the restraining order had resulted in a mandatory mediation session. Emily sat across from her stepmother, calm and composed. Linda looked smaller now. Not physically, emotionally. Stripped of leverage, stripped of fear as currency. You ruined everything, Linda said bitterly. Emily shook her head. No. I stopped letting you. The mediator ended the session quickly. There was nothing left to negotiate. As Emily walked out of the building, sunlight warmed her face. She didn't feel victorious. She felt finished. Later that month, Emily hosted her first financial literacy workshop on her own. No sponsorship, no press, just a room full of people who wanted to learn. Jonathan attended, not as a billionaire, but as a quiet supporter sitting in the back. At the end, Emily looked out at the group and spoke from a place she once didn't know existed. "No one is coming to save you," she said gently. "But that doesn't mean you're alone. Help is real. Growth is real. And you are allowed to choose more." Applause filled the room, not loud, but sincere. That night, Emily and Jonathan walked home together. The city glowed softly, familiar and kind. "Do you ever think about that day?" Jonathan asked. "The car." Emily nodded. "Sometimes. Do you wish it hadn't happened?" She stopped walking and considered the question carefully. "No," she said. "I wish it hadn't been necessary. But I don't wish it away." Jonathan smiled. "Neither do I." They stood there, hands finally entwined, not because they needed to be, but because they wanted to be. Months later, on a quiet summer evening, Emily sat on her balcony with a notebook, writing, not budgets or goals, but a letter to herself. "You survived what you weren't meant to endure. You built what you weren't given. You chose what was once denied to you." Jonathan stepped outside and leaned against the railing beside her. "What are you writing?" Emily closed the notebook. "A reminder." "Of what?" She looked out at the city, alive and wide and full of possibility. "Of who I am when no one is trying to control me." Jonathan kissed her then, not urgently, not possessively, but with certainty. Emily Carter had once hidden to survive. Now she stood openly in a life she had built, surrounded by choices she made freely, grounded in strength she owned completely. And this time, nothing, and no one, could take it from her. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances, don't forget to subscribe. We share powerful billionaire dramas, emotional transformations, and life-changing stories where the weak rise, the truth wins, and destiny is rewritten. Subscribe now so you never miss a new episode like this video. To support the channel, comment below and tell us what part of the story moved you the most. Your support helps us bring more unforgettable stories to life. See you in the next billionaire drama.